Hello, questioners and quest givers. My name is Tcgs, and it's time for another Patreon Q&A podcast for those who are interested in those things. And this time around, I tried to expand the breadth of the people I was asking questions to, so we've got some questions from the Let's Play channel, which is the channel that you're going to be watching this on. We've got some from Patreon, and we've got some from the Shorts channel, even, so that I can justify putting a link on the Shorts channel to this thing, so that people will go watch it. Because, like, that thing has more subscribers than my main channel now, which is weird. Anyway, for those who don't know, if you pay me any amount of money at all in any way, you can ask me questions for these things, whether that's Patreon or being a member of one of the channels or whatever. And we do a little Q&A monthly. Maybe it's going to be bi-monthly, like, if the questions slow down. Who knows? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together, all of us. And what we'll also figure out is what the first question is. Let me just pull that thing up on my thing. Right. Ninuska asks... this is from my Let's Play channel. Would you consider making some chatty videos while playing Legends of Runeterra? Maybe Path of Champions of the Expeditions. I am thinking that, yes. I sort of fall in and out of playing Legends of Runeterra. The trouble with it is that mostly when I play Legends of Runeterra, I'm playing it while I'm like listening to podcasts. I'm like having YouTube videos that I sort of want to listen to, playing it on my other monitor, looking over at them whenever they're interesting. And that's not really, like, I can't really record gameplay while I'm doing that, so most of my playtime with Legends of Runeterra is that, like, just running through Path of Champions and, like maybe building a ridiculous deck and playing normals. And so it was one of those games that I was sort of intending to record a lot more of, but I just never really found a way to do it. But once the new patch drops, the one where they do the 2.0 version of the Path of Champions, I'm really hoping that they'll do more stories, like much like they have with the original, with the Path of Champions before, where they drop these stories for like Vi and Caitlyn and like these little mini narratives with comics. God, I'm hoping that they'll do that for Path of Champions 2.0, and if they do that, oh boy, I'm all over that. Like, definitely making videos out of that, because that was, oh god, that was so much fun. So yes, that's definitely a thing that may be in the cards. Which moves us on to Sino Nightshade, who asks, any interest in the Kingdom Hearts anniversary event? That, oh boy, you're a little late on that one, because that went and gone, but I didn't have any interest in the Kingdom Hearts anniversary. I didn't care. Wasn't interesting to me because because I was under the impression that Kingdom Hearts 4 would take as long as Kingdom Hearts 3 to get like announced and it turned out that they've been developing it. But no, Kingdom Hearts 4 just got fucking announced out of nowhere. And Sora doesn't have clown shoes anymore, and that's weird. I really am assuming that it's one of those, like, Kingdom Hearts has a history of doing fake-outs like that, where, like, the first initial trailers and the initial stuff that they show for the new game is like, oh, what the fuck is this? Like, weird shit that doesn't really seem to match with any of what the game's been previously. Like, I'm thinking especially of the trailer for Kingdom Hearts 2, like, with the Dark City and the people, like, yo, the guy with the 2 Keyblades fighting the shadows, running up the building, and then there was a guy on top of the building, and he had a Keyblade too, and they were fighting shadows together. Ugh. Like, I remember like being there for that hype, and like everyone going, what the fuck is going on here? And like fan theories flying all over the place. Those were the good old days. And I think they're doing the same thing with the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer, is that area that they're in, because Darkseid shows up there. I have to imagine that's the tutorial area. Like, that's just Nomura getting it out of his system. Like, he so desperately wants to make Final Fantasy 15, 13 versus whatever the fuck it was. Like, I think he has like a fixation with like that aesthetic and that thing that he just really desperately wants to make, and he's getting that out of his system. And then once we clear that, Goofy and Donald are gonna show up, gonna get a gummy ship, gonna fuck off, fly around, presumably to Star Wars world. Which is really what it seems like they've been teasing, is like they're breaking out of just like the Disney movies, like the sort of the animated Disney canon, and now we're into the Disney franchise. So I have to imagine that, like, not only are we getting Star Wars world, it's probably inevitable that we're going to be running around in Marvel world at some point. Which, I wish I wasn't such a fucking sucker for that. But I am. I'm gonna be slopping that shit right out of the trough like the hog I am, because Kingdom Hearts has, like, it's one of those franchises, like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna defend any part of it because it's all incredibly stupid, but I love it, I adore it, and so I probably should have watched the anniversary event, but, you know, the trailer dropped on Twitter like 4 seconds after it got shown, so didn't miss out on much. Black Pearls asks, do you have a favorite Final Fantasy summon? If so, which game has the best version of said summon? Ooh, oh shit, oh my god, oh you have activated my trap card, because I have opinions about this. Substantial opinions, and the first one I'll say is that the final Bahamut summon you get in Final Fantasy VII is the best Bahamut summon. What's it called? I can't remember. There's 3 versions of Bahamut, where it's Mega Flare, Giga Flare, and Terra Flare, I think is where it's at. And the final one is the best Bahamut. Just because it is so... And this was like... You have to understand that in context, is that this was way the hell back in the PlayStation days, like when the PS1 first came out, when 3D graphics were a new thing that people were still sort of figuring out, and Final Fantasy VII certainly was still figuring them out, where we went from like the SNES and the Mega Drive, and like these 32-bit-ish consoles that were still like mostly ran 2D shit, to fully rendered 3D environments, and Squaresoft all of a sudden is like, hey, we can make anime in this thing. And that's what they did with every single goddamn summon sequence in Final Fantasy. Like, you don't understand this as someone who's young these days. Like, you children with your... you do not understand how fucking hype those summoning sequences was when you're... Oh yeah, they take 4 billion years. They take forever. You summon Knights of the Round and you can go get yourself a snack and a bath and like a college degree and come back and it's still going. But you don't understand how fucking hype that was back then, because that shit literally was not possible before. Like, it was literally seeing something that has never been possible in the history of gaming before unfold on the screen. So that Bahamut is definitely the best one, but the best Shiva is Final Fantasy X. Like, she is the best one, also the hottest one, but that's not why she's the best one. She's the best one because of the way that she's animated. Like, specifically because of the way her animation works, the way she interacts with Yuna. It's so good. Like, it's the best Shiva. It is the best one. Because it's just, like, and I can't even remember what she looks like in Final Fantasy XII. You can't summon Shiva in Final Fantasy XII. And she isn't in 13 either, is she? There must be a Shiva in 14, but I haven't run into her yet. I think. No, I've only beaten Titan and Ifrit. Yeah. So no, yeah, Final Fantasy X Shiva. Best one. Best one. Because, God, it's just, I can't even really articulate why. I started like, oh, I'll tell you why, but then I realized I sort of couldn't. It's just like something about her specifically, the way she's animated, the way she's presented, like with the hair, with the braids, like the jewelry that's woven into it. Just the image of a goddess in such a good way. Love that one. So yeah, I don't have a favorite Final Fantasy summon, but I can go off on any of them and the ways that they're presented from Final Fantasy. When was the first time Summoner showed up? Final Fantasy 3, I think. All the way through. Yeah, all of them. So, yeah, but we won't do that because that'll take 10 billion years. And that maybe that's a subject for a video, actually, one day, like tracking the way that character designs of Final Fantasy summons have changed over time. That might be interesting. Paul32 asks, do you own a VR device, or are you even interested in VR? I do not own a VR device. I haven't had the money for it, first of all. Nor have I had the room. Which, you know, puts a damper on it. But I am a VR skeptic. I do not like the period of VR hype has sort of run its course and come to an end. But it is not the future of gaming. It absolutely is not, and it will never be. Because input devices are good, actually. Because full motion control is not the be all and end all of gaming. Like I know we all have sort of I think it stems from these nerd fantasies about, oh, we're gonna live inside the video game, we're gonna escape the shitty real world and live in like the good version of the Matrix or whatever. And no, I'm sorry. Like this is art. This is media. You're engaging with it from an outside position. You immerse yourself in it, but it is not the real world, and it never will be, and it never should be either. And that's kind of where, like, the really hardcore VR evangelists, I kind of feel like that's where they are. Like mentally, like when it's, and I mean the really hardcore ones. Like, there's not just people who are enthusiastic about it, but like the people who are like, oh, future of gaming, future everything VR. Like, those people, they live in a world where the Matrix is a good thing. And I don't think it is. Input devices are good. Input, like like keyboards, mouse, whatever, things that mediate your input into the game world gives, in my opinion, and I have tried a few, like I've tried PSVR, I've tried the Valve Index, like they give me a better sense of immersion and control than putting on a headset and getting into a first-person perspective of the character. But the one game I do want to play in VR, like I really desperately do want to play in VR, is, what's its name? Moss, I think it is, like something like that, where there's a little mouse that you have to help as like a benevolent entity, and you're looking down on him from above, and you're sort of helping him by doing VR stuff, pulling things. So he communicates with you with sign language, and it's the single most fucking adorable thing I've ever seen in my life. And I very badly want to play that in VR with a really good headset. And like, there's a few games I've been interested in, but I don't have the money for it, nor the space for it. So it's not a thing that's going to be happening for me anytime soon. Like, it needs to go through like another couple of cycles of hype and bust until it becomes actually affordable for like real people. Which moves us on to Laria. What's a video game you can't wait to start on the 2B's kind? Oh my god, like you... Another trap card. I have so many. I have Neo The World Ends With You sitting on my Switch and picking it up out of its cradle right now. I've got Neo The World Ends With You. I kind of wanted to get back into Monster Hunter. I do want to play more Kirby. I have Triangle Strategy sitting right the fuck here, and the only reason why I haven't played it yet is like I'm sort of thinking I want to at least put a couple of episodes of that on the 2B's Kind channel. And I've sort of been messing around with maybe I'd try Pokemon Unite and maybe try playing that for content, and that's just on my fucking Switch, man. Let's see, what else did I pick? Bravely Default 2. I kept meaning to play that one for something. I wanted to play Bravely Default 1 first, and then Bravely Default 2. We've got Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap. It got a fantastic 2D remake that I kind of want to play it on the channel just to capture footage of it, so that I can maybe use it in a video about the brilliant animation of that game someday. We have got Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I really kind of wanted to do a playthrough of that one on the channel as well, and I've been thinking of doing some Fire Emblem Three Houses on the channel also. Like, I finished most of that game. I never finished the Golden Deer route, and I didn't go into the DLC. I think I was in the last few battles of the Golden Deer route by the time I bugged out. So those I've really sort of been wanting. Then there's the Monster Hunter Rise expansion that's coming out that I really kind of want to play. I want to play it with people. If I can swing it, I might want to play it with some content creator friends and like do a collaboration thing. That would be cool. Total War Warhammer 3. I sort of wanted to maybe try. I don't know that strategy games are a great fit for the channel, but yeah, I don't really care that much about content strategy on here, so that's fine. Well, I wanted to play more Legends of Runeterra. Like I said, I've got a bunch of classic old games. Like, I wanted to play the old Fire Emblem games, like the Sacred Stones, like the GBA games. I wanted to play Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I wanted to play... I had a plan at one point to do Final Fantasy Tactics, and I sort of started in on Final Fantasy X2 once upon a time, and then that bunch of stuff went wrong with that, and it just sort of petered out. And I was sort of working my way through all the Final Fantasy games. Bottom fell out of it. Final Fantasy 14, I want to get that going on the channel again. Got an editor lined up who will help make those videos for me. Well, not for me, but with me. So I don't have to worry about editing the footage of an MMO into something that's like not incredibly tedious, just watching me hit attack buttons over and over again. Yeah, no, like, trap card. I have so many. I am never, ever, ever at a loss for video games. Heartspace Shipbreaker. I started that up again, and then I heard from, then the developers, 2 days after I started it up again, I recorded a couple of episodes of it, the developers were like, oh yeah, the 1.0 version is coming now. and we're gonna reset all your progress again in like a few weeks. And I was like, fuck, god damn it. And I had to stop playing it. But now the actual 1.0 release of Heartspace Shipbreaker, where the full story is in it, is coming out. And I want to play that. I have Deathloop sitting on my computer as well, which I really kind of wanted to play on the channel. Just play a FPS for once. And Death Stranding and Control. Like, those are the oldest ones. Death Stranding and Control. They have been on my list for fucking ever. Like, I have had plans to play those games since they came out on the second channel. Like, they're here in my library. They've been installed since they came out. They've just sat there. I've never played them. Well, I opened Control just to see how it would run on my graphics card, but I'd never played them, but I kept meaning to. It's just I could never find the time to commit to doing them, and stuff keeps coming out. Also, there's a lot of stuff, is the point I'm getting at. Many things, Laria, many things indeed. Finnegan Ulysses asks, I know it's still a really long time away, but after Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3, do you have plans to continue the boss design format in some way? I can honestly say that the concept has been a favorite and one of the most creative takes on a Let's Play I've seen in a long time. There would be something missing without it, although you mentioned that the series underperforms for your channel, which is a shame and doesn't do the format justice. Yeah. I don't have, like, beyond Dark Souls 3, it's like Demon Souls, maybe. Like, that would be the place to continue it, would be after Elden Ring, and then after Dark Souls 3, by which time maybe FromSoft is putting out Elden Ring 2, for all I fucking know. But, like, after Dark Souls 3, Demon Souls, maybe. Like, that's gonna be, like, years away, and God only knows how the world will change by then, and how, like, things will change for me. Who knows? But, like, that's sort of the vague plan that I had in my head, and beyond that, no, kinda. I have been thinking about, like, what other things would work with the boss designs format. And that's one of the things I've been trying a little bit with Elden Ring, is like I've sort of like, it's still called the boss designs of Elden Ring, but I've been sort of trying to pivot a little bit away from like the format I've had with, like, there's a gameplay section first, and then, like, with Past Skyne doing gameplay, and then Future Skyne jumps in at the end to do an analysis of the thing that's happened, and then we move on to the next episode with the next boss. Like, Elden Ring has sort of forced me to change that up a little bit, because it's an open world game and there isn't really any kind of linear progression ever. But also, I've been sort of very subtly trying to change things up a little bit, and, like, sort of trying to look for a format in which I could do something like that would work for a game that isn't based entirely around, like, that isn't so based around its bosses as Elden Ring and like Soulsborne games are. Like, they are very much games about their bosses. That's why the format works for them. Which is, like, I've been sort of messing with it, and, like, I'm thinking that it would be cool if I could translate it to Metroid, for example. Something like that. Like, play Super Metroid, like, as an experiment, try and do Super Metroid, like, with that particular approach, and see if that works, because Metroid is another series that has these very strong boss designs, from which you can then sort of start to extract, like, meaning and consideration, but yeah, it's like, it would need a lot of adaptation. And I'm not like, after the boss designs of Demon Souls, whatever I do after that, like, maybe by that time I'll have changed my mind and I'll do boss designs of Sekiro, but, like, boss designs is FromSoft games. Like, that's where boss designs is as a franchise. As a franchise. What a fucking wanky thing to say. As a series. It's Elden Ring games, or it needs to be a game that is very, very strongly focused on the boss fights in a way that you can extract interesting meaning from. So maybe, like, and which is where I've been thinking Metal Gear Solid, maybe? Because, like, Metal Gear is another one of those series that is very much structured around its boss fights, and whose boss fights can be used to extract some sort of meaning. And that would let me dive into, like, the prophetic, often very interesting, very wise, and also deeply fucking weird and often very misogynistic nonsense of Hideo Kojima. In a way that, like, I don't know, might lead up to playthrough of Death Stranding that way, who knows? Like, I've been thinking that the Metal Gear series might be something that would work with a boss designs format. With the trouble being, of course, that I can't go, like, unlike the Souls series, where part of the joy of it is like watching me play through these games and not know what the hell I'm doing, and sort of learn mastery and figure it out. I have played through the Metal Gear Solid series many times. Except Metal Gear Solid 3. I never vibed with that one originally, for whatever reason. But I've played through Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, and even 4, which I think is terrible. And I've played through... Oh god, I've played so many hours of 5. So it's like... I would sort of drop into those games, and I would immediately just know exactly where to go and how to do everything. So I guess I'd have to play them on, like, high difficulty or something to make the gameplay part more compelling. I don't know. Like, I've been thinking about it. Like, I've been thinking about series where the boss battles and the bosses are like where there are like, well, not necessarily boss battles, but where there are these capstone moments that contain a lot of meaning that you can go from. And not all games do this. Like, a lot of games don't really have, like, because the thing that's been so fruitful about the boss designs of the Souls games is that there is so much thematic layering in those games. Like, FromSoft are really good at just shoving a million tons of shit in there. Like, they build these enormous worlds where interpretation is necessary. Like, it's absolutely necessary, because there are no explanations in Souls games. You have to interpret things. Like, at some point, the amount of item descriptions you can find run out, and there's a bunch of cut content, and there's all this mystery that FromSoft deliberately leave there for you to find. That is why this series is interesting, because that opens up for many different interpretations of what a character can mean. And Metal Gear is another series that, like, it's almost the opposite in a way, because the Metal Gear series over-explains everything way too much all the time. Like Hideo Kojima cannot wait to spill the fucking beans about every single aspect of his story and his world. That's kind of how he is as a writer, is like he does way too much, but he does all of it very, very, very sincerely, and he does it a lot, in a way that ends up being compelling. So, like, the Metal Gear series might be another one that can sort of carry that, where the interpretation that I can offer actually does something, like where the interpretation that I can offer in the boss designs format actually adds something to the conversation, is actually interesting in some way. There are other games, like, for example, Katana Zero, for example. Like, the other games that are about not Katana Zero, what's it called? It's a fighting game. It's about, like, No More Heroes. Let's say No More Heroes. There's games like No More Heroes, that, like, also are structured around, like, this series of boss fights, but which they just don't have as much going on. At least not, it's been a long time since I played No More Heroes. I don't want to insult the series, but at least not as far as I can tell, there just isn't that much going on there. One game might be Hollow Knight, but Hollow Knight is also one of those games that, like, that does explain its backstory enough that there's wikis everywhere. Like, the wikis have mined everything out of Hollow Knight, like, down to the most minute detail. Like, there is not a lot of ambiguity left in Hollow Knight after the wiki miners have done with it. But it's one of those games that maybe... But it's also a game I've played through multiple times, and I've, like, almost... Not entirely. I haven't beaten the final version of the Radiance in the Pantheon of the Gods. Like, that one kicked my ass too many times, and I sort of fell out of it. But, like, that's how far I've gotten, and that's how good I am at that game. So, again, there's that thing of, like, how interesting is it to watch me play a game that I am already incredibly good at, where I know where all of the secrets are. Yeah. But anyway... Yes, and thank you very much for the kind words about the series. I'm very happy that it appeals to you like that. And yes, it does underperform for the channel relative to League of Legends content, I should say. It's been getting better, like, especially with Elden Ring, because the game is very topical and the algorithm is a little more kind to it. It has been getting better, and the old series, like, this is one of the really nice things about the Boss Design series, is it has longevity. Like, there's a reason to go back and watch the old ones, as lots of people have. Like, that's something that's been really heartwarming, and it really has made me kind of slightly emotional sometimes, is people telling me that, like, after watching, like, my Like, they found my shorts on the Shorts channel, and then they watched the Boss Designs of Bloodborne series, and then they went back and watched Boss Designs of Dark Souls 2 and 1. And, like, and that they still like me. Because I look back on the Boss Designs of Dark Souls 1, and I just go, oh god, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, oh no! I only see the mistakes, right? But people go back and, like, watch the first episodes of that show where I was so all over the place, where I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I had no format, I had no plan. I didn't know how to make the series, essentially, and they still are so kind about it. And still seem to enjoy going back and watching that. Like for some people, it's become a thing of like, hey, I'll put it on a playlist on the side, and I'll rewatch the entire Boss Designs of whatever, while I'm doing my work or while I'm cleaning or something. Which, like, it's become sort of a comfort thing for some people. Which is like, that's, oh my god, that's really nice. And because of that, it has a longevity. Like, it doesn't get tons of views or whatever, but it's always getting a few views. Like, it's always pulling in a little bit. So it's one of those things that I feel like it even if it didn't make a lot, it's never made a lot of money at the time when it's published. It pulls its weight over time. Which has been very encouraging. Anyway, that'll spend a long time on that one. But I hope that answers your question, Finnegan Elises. What was your question? I feel like I've forgotten. Fell asks, can you talk about a video game scene that stood out to you particularly because of how the music was used in conjunction with it? Not necessarily a favorite, but perhaps a really strong all of the feels moment. I'm not sure I can, really. People often ask me about like music in games, and especially like with the Boss Design series. To return to that one, people like, oh, and you should talk about the music for the boss fight. Or you should talk about how the music is so interesting and important. And I'm sorry, that's just never really. It's just not really how I experience video games. Like outside of like very obvious standout moments like plin plin plonk, like meeting Gwyn for the first time and like getting the sad music instead of the ball 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 ball, like instead of the bombastic Souls nonsense. It's just not really how I experience video game music in that way. Like at least it seems to be that other people have a very different and much stronger experience of like the soundtrack as part of like a boss fight in a game than I do. But for me, when I'm fighting a boss in a video game, it's just like, fuck, stop killing me, god damn it. Like I'm focused on playing, I'm focused on dodging, and when I'm recording for the Boss Design series especially, I'm focused on doing commentary as well, like trying to keep it interesting a little bit. And so I just don't really pay that much attention to the music outside of its function as a score for what's happening in the game. So no, I really don't think I can name a scene like that. I guess the scene in Final Fantasy X when the party arrives at Samarkand. And it does this little sort of bookend, closing the loop kind of thing, where you open on this scene of Tidus walking up onto the hill, saying, "Listen to my story. This may be our last chance." And like you hear to Samarkand in the background, and like, da, 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 and you see the party like sitting around the fire, and then they repeat that scene fully by the time you get to Samarkand. And like that was a standout moment where the music really is very important, because like the to Samarkand theme in Final Fantasy X is like an emotional tone setter for the entire game. Of like there's a lot of sort of upbeat and much more energetic music in Final Fantasy X, but that song, like la 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 la, like that mood is what the game is. So I guess that's to answer your question, but broadly speaking, I just don't really experience video game music in that way. If you could spend a day, asks Khan, with one artist or animator living or dead just to hang out and hear their stories, who would it be and why? Fuck. Shit. Oh my god, so many. Like, because I would kill for the chance to spend a day just hovering around Milt Kal's desk while he was animating on, like, the Jungle Book. Shere Khan, like, which is one of his masterpieces of anime. Like, God, I would, and I don't necessarily know that I want to hang out and hear his stories as such. Like, I just want to watch him work. I wouldn't mind spending a day with Glenn Keane or Don Rosa, like Kino Don Rosa, who does some of the best Disney comics that you or I will ever read. Wouldn't like I know he's had health problems recently though, so like when he was younger, maybe in his prime, and it didn't hurt for him to draw. Poor man, really. Definitely would have loved that. But like Milt Kahl, like if I get to pick an animator, Milt Kahl. Like I love his animation so much. I love his arrogance in the way that he animates. Which is a strange thing to say, and I don't mean that as a derogatory. It's not a negative thing. It's that the Milt Kahl cannot resist a chance to show off a little bit. Like if you pay attention to the way he animates characters, he's always a little bit extra. Like there's always a little bit more in a Milt Kahl performance, because the man just like I'm the shit. Like he just knew how fucking good he was, and he kept showing it off in like just the most wonderful way. Like the head swaggle is the famous example. Like where you look at Milt Kahl characters, he takes a lot of opportunities to have his characters like wiggle their heads or shake them back and forth while they are talking, which is really fucking hard to animate. Like in 2D hand-drawn animation, trying to rotate a head in 3D space while maintaining the rhythm and the syllables and like the lip sync of a speech animation on the level of like a Disney movie, holy fucking shit, my guy! I wouldn't even want to fucking attempt that. Like that's difficult. And when he's moving the head, waggling it back and forth, like rapidly doing these little motions and making it land every goddamn time, how does a person do that? I don't know, but I want to see. So that would be my answer to that question. Amanda Sargent asks, what kinds of museums do you like to patronize the most? I love art museums as well as science museums, but I tend to gravitate to cultural museums and zoos more when I have the time and money to pay a visit. P.S. If you ever get a chance, the Shed Aquarium, Field Museum, and St. Louis Zoo are all lovely. At least they were pre-COVID. I really do want to go to the Field Museum. I want to go to Monterey Bay, just to see that one. Like, I know that there's a bunch of fantastic museums in the United States that I might want to go visit if the United States wasn't the terrifying hell country that I fear. That's partly a joke. But no, I don't go to, like, I mean, it's been some years since I've gone to a museum for obvious reasons, but I really do want to go to more art museums. Like I visited I think it's the National Art Museum in Berlin when I was there last, and that was a wonderful experience. Like really just walking among the paintings and like the statues, like especially the statues. God, I love statues. Like really good sculpture when you get to be up close and personal with it. Fuck yeah. We had a museum in a town I used to live near, Aarhus, as a museum called Aros, and they have a statue down there of a giant boy. Basically, it's a statue of a fairly photorealistic child with sort of long, gangly limbs, like sort of that awkward sort of preteen phase of like a boy going through growth spurts, like gangly, lanky, who's squatting down and sitting. And it's just, and there's no anything about, like, it's just a sort of slightly vulnerable, curious, interesting pose, and then it's just big. Like, that's it. That's all. It's just a big statue of a boy. And that's the only thing about it. But being in the room with that fucking thing, like, that's an experience, man. Like, that is a thing. Like, you have an emotional experience with that. Like, I think pretty much everyone who goes into the room and bothers to pay attention to it, there's something uncanny and weird about being in the room with it. Like, there's something about just the sheer overwhelming size of it and the fact that it's fairly photorealistic that just your brain keeps wanting to imbue it with life. And then when, like, one part of your brain is trying to breathe life into it in your mind, then another part of your brain is going, holy shit, there's a huge giant, like, that's a huge person, holy fuck. Like, so there's this weird tension of your subconscious not knowing how to deal with it, that sort of forces you to see the thing strangely. Like, you sort of end up either depersonalizing it, like seeing it as inhuman, which it is, it's a statue, like seeing the character as inhuman, or you end up feeling, certainly I did, a really strange connection of empathy with this extremely giant boy, where, like, you'd think the natural reaction to it would be fear, but instead I started to sort of feel like almost a slightly paternal instinct. Like, when I sort of imagined, like, when I pretended that this was a real, if this was a real human being, what would my feeling be towards it? And it was sort of like, oh, I kind of want to protect them and take care of them in a weird way, which is like, that's a strange feeling to have towards, like, even at the size it was, I still saw it on some level as a child, which, that was interesting. Like, and none of that comes across in pictures. Like, in pictures, it's just like, oh, it's big and it's kind of creepy and weird. Like, you don't get any of that. Like, it's in pictures, it looks stupid. Most of the time, it looks ridiculous, as I'm sure you'll see, because I'll be putting pictures on the screen of it. But in person, like, being in the room with the damn thing, it's just a different sensory experience. Like, as you would imagine, like, it's different. Being in the room with something is different than watching it on a screen, obviously. I do want to go to the Louvre. Like, I do want to go. Like, I do want to go see like Gioconda. I do want to go see the Mona Lisa, because, you know, you gotta see the Mona Lisa while you're there. But they also have, I think it's at the Louvre now, the Raft of the Medusa, which is one of my favorite paintings. I want to see that painting in person so bad. Like, because it's big. Like, it's like a huge, absolutely enormous canvas, and it's this scene of. It's a real scene from history, by the way. It was a ship called the Medusa, which was shipwrecked really, really badly because of just absolutely maddeningly incompetent captains, and the passengers ended up building a raft out of whatever the hell they could find and floating along on the sea for days and days and days, like for so long that they ran out of drinkable water and they ran out of food very, very quickly. And they ended up eating the corpses of the people who died of exposure under the brutal sun and cold, of just floating around on the ocean. Before they were finally spotted, like, by the most amazing luck you can imagine, by a distant ship that picked them up. And it was a scene of horror. Like, it was a huge scandal at the time. And it was an awful, awful scene. And the way the artist has chosen to depict that is, like, they made a decision to have a really fucking huge canvas in their picture memorializing this. And again, that's a very different emotional experience of being in the room with an image that is so big. Like, it's just the monkey brain treats that differently. Like, however rational you sort of think of yourself as being, you can always dissociate from it, of course. Like, anyone who has, like, who is sort of determined not to be affected by it will not be affected by it. But being in the room with a canvas that big depicting those scenes, and especially with, like, one of the brilliant details of picture is that there is the rescue boat is in sight, and the passengers on the raft are signaling it down, like they're waving their shirts around, like going, see us, and it is a moment of hope. Like, it is this moment of, like, they've been through this harrowing hellish experience, and now there's hope, they're gonna be rescued. Like, you think, everything's gonna be fine now. But the ship in the picture is this tiny little dot on the horizon. And there were earlier sketches of the painting where the artist was going to make the ship much bigger, much closer. Like, it should be much more certain that, oh yeah, no, they're there, they're going to get saved. It was a much more resolved, kind of comfortable scene. But in the final version, he's made the ship this little tiny pinprick, just sitting out on the horizon a million miles away. And even knowing that, yeah, they do get rescued, and, like, they do get seen, and things, like, just the tension of that scene of the passengers who are, like, reaching up into the sunlight, waving their shirts around, going, God fucking hell, please see us, we've been through hell, please come and rescue us, we beg of you. And seeing the ship so far away, you get that, you get that sense of empathy with the passengers. You get that sense of both that this is their moment of greatest hope from a terrible, terrible ordeal, but also that ship is really far away. And the guy in the crow's nest might not be looking over here. And, like, you feel that sense of that mixture of hope of rescue, but also absolute terror that you're going to see a ship on the horizon, and the ship isn't going to see you. Like, That's there in that picture, even when I look at it on a screen, and I want to see that in person. So yeah, mostly art museums are sort of my jam, but I do want to go to some more local history museums. Anyway, Martin Olson, in your March 2022 Q&A, you said that you can't eat your favorite dish, spaghetti bolognese, since you found out that you were gluten intolerant. Have you tried some gluten-free pastas? No, I have not tried gluten-free pastas, and the reason why I haven't is that I found something better, which is rice noodles. Rice noodles, basically, they do the same job as pasta does and as noodles do, and it's not quite the same texture. Obviously, it's a slightly different taste because it's not flour. So I haven't tried any gluten-free pastas, but I found something else that can sort of play the same part and let me still eat. Like usually, I just make the sauce and turn it into a chili nowadays because like. The pasta is just there to be carbs, really. It's there to absorb the sauce and become a delivery vessel for the sauce into your mouth. I'm offending Italians by saying this, but no, I'm good. But thank you for the suggestion. If ever, I do want to try some gluten-free pastas. It would be nice to be able to eat it at least, but we'll see about that. Gluten-free anything generally doesn't taste that great. Druxy, what's your opinion on the third Bayonetta design in comparison to 1 and 2? Yeah, see, now there's a question. Because it is a huge change. Like, well, okay, I say truth. It's not a huge change, but it is in a sense it is. The first Bayonetta had that conical arrangement with her hair up in like that long braided thing, right? Second Bayonetta did this sort of lesbian aunt kind of vibe with the short hair. And it's sort of cropping it in a little bit closer to something a little bit more tomboyish. And then this one is, interestingly, feels a little bit counter to Bayonetta's general vibe, because Bayonetta generally is like she pole dances for the camera. Like, Bayonetta is one of the sexiest things you'll ever see in your entire goddamn life, but she's not ever doing it, like, it's part of, like, her, this radical liberation thing. Like, of like, this complete ownership of her own sexuality and her own beauty. And there is something about that highly elaborate sort of, like, it's because I associate the hairstyle with, like, nobility, with the extremely over-elaborate appearance rituals of like, sort of essentially, like, a Louis XIV Versailles court kind of thing. Like, that's the kind of thing I associate with it, and that feels too conservative for Bayonetta in an interesting way. And, like, outside of this sort of hyper-theoretical wank, that's sort of the only opinion I really have. That's why I haven't made a short about it, for example, is that I don't really have a strong opinion. I don't think it's a good idea or a bad idea. I think we've seen like 30 seconds of footage of it so far, and we don't know how it interacts with, like, what exactly they're doing with the Bayonetta character. Like, I've seen people theorizing, for example, that this is not actually the Bayonetta that we've been playing so far, that this is Cereza, Bayonetta's former child self, to whom she was also a sort of surrogate mother, which is one of the really interesting narrative bits about Bayonetta, like the way that she has to reparent herself and sort of heal her own childhood trauma. And anyway, that's way outside the scope of the question. But, like, I don't know exactly what they're doing with it. Like, I think maybe there's a point to making this third Bayonetta design so distinct in its way, like to perform a different kind of version of her character. Maybe there's a point to that. We'll see when the game comes out, in like 15 years. God only knows. Like, it's presumably a lot further along in development by now. But wow, the wait for that game was brutal. Shivarius asks, do you have any feelings regarding character designs in popular tokusatsu franchises such as Godzilla, Sentai, Ultraman, Kamen Rider, etc.? I don't follow a lot of them. Like, I really haven't watched a bunch of tokusatsu. Like, I've watched a bunch of Godzilla movies in my time, including, like, I have a special love for the cheesy ones, like the cheesy, silly Godzilla fights this guy and that guy with two dudes in rubber suits doing wrestling moves on each other. I have a fondness for those. As far as character design, I don't know that I have any strong opinions to sort of articulate right now. I really liked Shin Godzilla. Like, I liked the sort of the Hideaki Anno, like the weirdness that he injected into that version of Godzilla, like the various forms that it takes, and the way that it felt much more like a sort of raw burn victim. Like in terms of like Godzilla originally being sort of an embodiment of atomic radiation and the tragedies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That Godzilla kind of looked charred, like it kind of looked like it had been sort of burnt or scorched in a really weird way that was kind of off-putting and strange. And I quite liked that as a redefinition, because Godzilla has taken so many forms. Like he's been the friend and defender of the children Godzilla. He's been the embodiment of nuclear disaster Godzilla. He's been, as he was in the not super great but with a few good moments Western production recently Godzilla movie, where he is more sort of a force of nature, where he but where there is this wonderful moment, which I thought was genuinely very good, where he's knocked to the ground by the Mutos or the whatever, like the completely unmemorable monsters that he's killing, and has this moment of eye contact with one of the humans, and you see him look at us the way that we would look at a puppy. Which is only possible because of the way that they designed the face and the eyes of that version of Godzilla, which I thought was like a genuinely brilliant move. So I thought that was very good. So I have some Godzilla opinions, but outside of that, not really any Tokusatsu opinions as such. Small Leviathan, and we're over to the Patreon question now, asks, why do they call it oven when you ov in the cold food out hot eat the food? Yeah. Jokes aside, are there any character designs in One Piece you find particularly striking or inventive? Bonus points if it's for a more minor character. I have always loved the Mafia Pirates. What the hell are their names? Capone Beige. I really do like him. First of all, because like he's not Capone knockoff. See, like he is like to the point of being a cartoonishly ridiculous version of like a stereotypical Italian mobster Don kind of character. That's very silly. That's very stupid. He's wearing like striped suits and shit while also being a pirate at the same time. That's very dumb. That's really sort of ridiculously idiotic. In a really wonderfully One Piece kind, in the way that only One Piece can be. But then the power that he has, like the living fortress thing that he's got going on, the fire tank pirates, yeah, the living fortress thing that he's got going on, where the whole thing of him is that like the way that he works as a character with powers is that he is a fortress for his family. Like he's literally a fortress for his family in the way that like you're thinking like, oh yeah, the Mafia Don, the head of the family, like he's the guy that takes care of things. Like he literally is a protection racket, right? Like he literally offers protection to all of the people who are under his service. Like he's sort of a literal representation of a protection racket in a way that interacts really interesting in the way that like his character deals with family bonds and like the idea of family as a thing that matters to him as a character. That I really like that. He's like genuinely kind of a fantastic idea for a character design, and I do like the way that his body type is presented, where he is like he's this man who's just like 90% neck, where there is no sort of discernible transition from his neck into his torso. It's just like block, like a thumb, and I do like that like he's so blobby and round, and just like the concept behind him is just really good. Oben was like a Chivit asks, between your YouTube channel, your Discord server, and probably another kind of social media somewhere, you've created by now 3 or 4 slightly different looking avatars, including your VTuber one of yourself. How is it to character design yourself, or rather a representation of yourself? Is there for you at least any particular aspect of it that differs from how you would normally approach a drawing? Or do you just go, well, I'll doodle someone with a beard because if my mirror isn't lying, I sure have one. And here I am. I mean, I've drawn self-portraits since the moment I started drawing. It's just, I don't know if that's a sign of narcissism. But yeah, no, that's always, I've always designed myself as characters. Sort of reflecting whatever is, like, back when I was really started, I was really into Final Fantasy. Like Final Fantasy VII was like, oh, best game of all time. I was really an evangelist for it, and so of course I gave myself Cloud Stripe's haircut. Back then, like it's always been sort of a way for me to reflect the things that I find interesting in my art back onto myself. So like every time I sort of try out a new art style or new tools or like a new way of drawing eyes or a new way of sort of drawing a thing, I'll usually do it on a self-portrait because like because I kind of don't have to think about that because I know what I look like, and so I know how to stylize that into a drawing. So for me, it's really, in terms of thinking about character design, I don't. When I do drawings of myself, I don't think about character design pretty much. Noodle Fiasco, what is a trope you can't get enough of? What trope do you wish would die already? Have you read Spy X Family? Do you have any thoughts on it? That's 3 questions. A trope I can't get enough of. My friends are my power. Like Nakama shit, you know, like sort of, I care so deeply for these people, and that's giving me the strength to do the thing. Like it's the world's most overplayed trope next to the power of love has given me the ability to triumph, but I will never be tired of it ever. Like sometimes I'll see it and I'll go, oh, that's really badly executed, but I'll never get tired of it. You can always get me. You can always get me with that shit. What trope do you wish would die already? I mean, it's easy to say the 3,000-year-old lolly, like that shit. I could do without it. Have I read Spy X Family? Do you have any thoughts on it? I think it's absolutely fucking amazing and fantastic, and everybody should read it because it's beautiful and it's adorable and it's very funny, and it is heartwarming. And I want Anya to have the best life ever for all time, forever. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Spy X Family. Squirrel Sword, do you play any TCGs, either digital or physical, besides Runeterra? Second question, you're a fan of Pokemon, but what about Digimon? And final question, Final Fantasy IX is the best Final Fantasy. And I'll answer the final one first by saying, yeah. Do I play any trading card games? No, outside of Runeterra, no. I have a Magic the Gathering deck, technically, like a starter pack that I bought just to have one, but I don't, like, there's no one anywhere within 1,000 miles of me that I can play it with in real life, so I've never used the deck for anything. I think it's not even shuffled. I used to play Magic with my friends back in, like, grade school, when I was the only kid who could read English, and I could just cheat rampantly by telling my friends that the card said something different than they did. That was a good time. But no, outside of that, no. Just Legends and Runeterra, basically. Second question, you're a fan of Pokemon, what about Digimon? Nope. The Digimon thing never really happened for my, in where I live. Like, I don't think we ever got the anime. And it mostly existed, at least as I remember the culture, it mostly existed as like a thing that everyone knew was kind of a knockoff of Pokemon. And I know that's more complicated than that, like in reality, but as far as it existed in my cultural understanding, it was, oh yeah, this is an obvious knockoff of Pokemon, which is less good and less interesting. So no, I've never gotten into it, and I'm not especially interested in it, because I think the character designs of the Digimons are bad. Like, really bad. Really just... And that's a personal, subjective opinion, but my god, I think they suck. Like, especially compared to Pokemon. My good gracious. Lawrence Wayland, moving on. I've made all the Digimon fans mad now. Do you play any TRPGs now in the past? If not, would you create a Patreon tier that would give you enough free time to join a game? I suppose I could GM if you are insisting. I just need to start a second job for that proposed Patreon tier. You want to run a game for me really badly, huh? Which is fair enough. I have played a full campaign of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which was absolutely wonderful. That was last year. Just one of the best experiences of my adult life, frankly, just because I had such a wonderful group to play with. And maybe I'm getting my ass into a World of Darkness game soon, if I'm lucky. I would hope so. And I am sort of looking around a little bit for like, maybe there's some other tables I can join. I have a bunch of friends who do work in the actual play space, and like I've been thinking about like either DMing a game myself, because I do have some ideas for a thing that could be a cool campaign setting, and making a video series out of that on my channel specifically, or joining like an actual play thing that someone else is doing. Because I really do want to sort of try and do that as a content thing besides just a personal thing. Could you create a Patreon tier that gives you enough free time to join a game? I promise you, my friend, you couldn't afford it. Again, I don't know, does that sound like a brag? I don't know, it sounds weirdly rude or uncouth in some way, but like no, I can't. It's I would not be comfortable asking any one person for that much money. Like no, like unless you are a Saudi Arabian oil prince, I would not ask any one human being for that much money. I would be very, very uncomfortable with that. It would also be unsafe as a business decision to rely very heavily on one person to subsidize you in that way. That doesn't really work. I much prefer... I would rather have 500 $1 patrons than one $500 patron, is the thing. But no, I can't create a Patreon tier that's at that level. Pedro Garcia Huidobro. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that even remotely correctly. I tried my best. What's my favorite question? Not that one. Wired asks, what's your weirdest favorite video series? Stuff like Savior Renegade Angel or Puppy the Performer. I don't know that I have one. No, like if you asked me when I was like in grade school, I would have been able to, like, back then Happy Tree Friends was still subversive and weird. Salad Fingers back in the day, that was strange. There were some absurdist things that went around back then. They don't exist anymore, and I don't remember their names. But no, these days I don't really have anything like that. So I'm sorry, I don't really have a good answer for you there. RC Scooter, I understand you're a big fan or owner of rats. Do you believe a movie like Ratatouille does rats some of the representational justice they've been denied by movies and video games from decades? Will rats ever escape from the shadow of their mousy brethren in the media? Yeah, Ratatouille did a relatively good job of making rats more palatable to a lot of people, I think. But it's not an accurate representation of rats. It's like fair. Like, you know, the animation does an okay job of capturing their mannerisms in some ways, but no, like that's Ratatouille is really not... I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Disney Pixar movie is not what rats are actually really like in real life, and it's not. It's like, no, in terms of sort of clearing up their name a little bit as a pest and as a disease-spreading, like, germ carrier thing, sure. It did an okay job of that, but will rats ever escape the shadow of their mousy brethren in the media? Probably not, because rats are vermin. Like from the perspective, like, I live right now in a series of apartment buildings that have, like, rules and statutes in the rent contract that you cannot leave trash outside. You cannot leave food outside. You cannot put up feeding platforms for birds, because that shit falls to the ground and then the rats get them and then the rats move in and then they start chewing on everything, and they can chew through concrete when they turn their minds to it. So they can, like, they cause real actual damage and problems as vermin, you know, and that's going to keep happening forever, and they do a lot more damage than mice do, although mice are not good either. So that's the way it goes. Are there any plot points or specific characters in the Soulsborne games you've played that you thought were maybe too vague, even for the Soulsborne lore style? No. Not really, no. But that's specifically because I'm a fan of it. Like, that's because I like it. I would imagine anyone who has, like, a deeper, like, because I like doing the interpretation, I like the vagueness, I like being able to think my own answers to questions. So I like that. Like, I like the vagueness. Like stuff like Velka in Dark Souls 1, for example. Like, it would be nice to have some more concrete answers about her. Fina, the goddess that, what's his name? Golden guy who murders the Lautrec, the guy that he worships. It would be nice to have more details about them, but it's not really necessary. Like, they're more interesting when they're vague, but I would imagine someone who has a different approach to media would be much more frustrated by it. Do you like to cook and or bake? If so, what are some dishes you enjoy making? I like making bread. I don't do it a lot. I do have some, like, I have picked up gluten-free flour, and, like, I'm gonna put a bunch of seeds in that and, like, make some bread loaves out of that, but I really do like baking bread. It's so easy and simple. Like, you can't fuck it up. Literally, you cannot fuck it up. You just beat the shit out of the flour for a long time until it's good. Although I think there might be a bit different baking technique with gluten-free flour that I need to figure out. But yes, I love baking bread. That's the only thing I'm good at baking. Joyce WR, did you see the Sonic 2 movie? No, I did not, and so I do not have an opinion on it yet, Joyce, so I can't really answer your question there, sorry. Colin, as someone interested in making comics, I was wondering what your feelings are about the current state of the industry. I've gotten really into comics lately, but it's distressing seeing how most of them are just kind of seen as that medium you mine for content to make movies and TV shows out of nowadays. Yeah, well, that sort of depends. I haven't been making comics for several years now at this point. I used to be a webcomic artist for a living, for those who don't know. But no, I haven't done that for a long time now. So I've sort of fallen out of touch with it, and I haven't read Cape comics in a long time. I haven't followed any superhero lines for a long time, because I found just the way that they're handled, the way that they're distributed, and because the way they're distributed, the things that they pander to, really tedious. And so mostly for me, it's been like, I'll hear about a good run, and then I'll wait for it to end, and then I'll pick it up, and then I'll read it occasionally. Like the run on Ms. Marvel with Kamala Khan, like the original one of that. Like, I've read that one, but I haven't read any of the stuff that happened after she got pulled into Marvel Multiverse bullshit. Because I dislike that, like the constant endless glut of crossover events, and like comics desperately begging you to buy all the other comics to understand what's going on. And the superhero comics are a fucking mess in that way. And it's distressing seeing how most of them are just seen as medium you mine for content to make movies and TV shows out of. Yeah, but that's also meaning full disrespect to the editorial staff of Marvel and DC. That's all they're good for. Like, the way that they're handled, like the way that most of the big comics are run nowadays, that's all they're fucking good for. Because they sure as shit, and this is a very strong opinion from a person who remember, hasn't read closely into a lot of comics for a long time. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe things are different, but that's all they were fucking good for a very long time. Because they are so hostile to outside readers, because they are so hostile to new people, they are so hostile to people who aren't interested in diving into the abyss of canon with every new release. Which is one of the things I really resent about superhero comics, is that a bunch of pedantic nerd assholes manage to convince the industry that canon is important. And like, oh, what's canon? What's... Like, no, fuck off. Like, it's not. What matters is a good story. But that's superhero comics. That's a very small section of the comics market these days. The big section of the comics market these days, like the really big one, is graphic novels. And independent comics, like stuff like what Iron Circus are doing. Iron Circus Publishing are doing. And they've been turned into stuff like what's it called? That Netflix show that recently got made about the game romance thing, like a really cool, cute gay romance comic. Like that's where the business is now. Like, is independent graphic novels, like stuff like the Lumberjanes used to do back in the day. Things like My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, which is fantastic. Mooncakes is a thing I picked up a while back that I haven't read yet, haven't fully read yet, but it's very cute and it's very good. Like, there's a lot of really solid work being done in the independent graphic novel scene, that if you are interested in making comics, go there. Don't go making superhero comics. It's not worth it. The working conditions are terrible. You own no rights to any goddamn thing, and you're going to get screwed over by the big publishers, because that's what they do, because they just want content mines. They don't want you to do anything cool or original. Again, saying that as someone who hasn't been closely following comics for a long time. Abyss Runner. How should joke characters like Riot's April Skins lines be judged? How well is the joke executed? How funny that joke is? How impressive the design looks? I mean, should be judged the way that any joke is judged. Does it make you laugh? Because, like, humor is very, very subjective. I do not find Meowkai funny at all, but I do find Pretty Kitty Rengar kind of funny. But a lot of people like Meowkai. And Meowrick. I find them very sort of tedious and annoying, but it should be judged like a joke. It's a joke thing, so it should be judged the same way that you judge a joke, which is, does it make you laugh, or does it amuse you in some way? And if it doesn't, probably not that great. Plague Amon, what do you think of the designs of the old gods from World of Warcraft? I haven't seen them. Like, outside of, what's that one thing, which is like the eyeball with the tentacles? Which I remember mostly because I saw it in Hearthstone. I've never played World of Warcraft. So I don't know what the old god... Cthulhu, that was what it's called. I remember that one, and that's just sort of a very vague takeoff on like Lovecraft tropes through a Blizzard art style that I didn't find particularly interesting. So I haven't seen the old god from World of Warcraft, and I don't know how that would relate to the Void creatures at all. I think Riot has a really strong visual direction for the Void creatures that they should just use, which is the sort of non-Euclidean sort of vague imitation of life horror shapes, rather than like they're stuff like Rek'Sai, the Voidlings, like a lot of the creatures that they've been making. They are just kind of the Zerg and the Tyranids. Like they're just sort of a version of that, and I find that kind of boring. Where I really wish they would lean more into the thing of like these things come from a alternate mirror un-universe where things do not exist, and they have to sort of fit their non-Euclidean nature into form in the physical realm, and that fucks them up in really weird ways, which I think they should lean into more. It's stuff they have really good concept art of, but yeah, haven't seen the old gods from World of Warcraft, so I can't really answer you there. Lethal Zero, and we're over on the Shorts channel now for these questions. I don't know if you've ever talked about mecha. What do you think about it, both from America and Asia? Gundam, Transformers, Megazords, NGE, TGL. More concretely, what do you think makes a good mecha design, and can interesting mecha designs be bad? I'm despite like I'm gonna be a massive hypocrite right now and say that I don't think it's very meaningful to describe design in terms of good or bad, because that's too binary, and things are always more complicated than that. Like in Shorts especially, I have to pretend like things are less complicated, because you can only do so much in 60 seconds in terms of nuance. But I don't know what makes a good mecha design. Like for me, in terms of like when I see a mecha and I go, oh shit, that's really good, it's when the mecha is appropriate to the story that's being told. So think, for example, of Transformers, right? Transformers has been many things at many different times, but when it was the 80s cartoon, the idea was Transformers, robots in disguise, was that these were robots that were able to conceal themselves as ordinary household objects. Like, well, household objects. Ordinary, like, regular-ass vehicles that you just see driving around in your normal life kind of thing, right? So, like, oh, there's a earth mover over there. That's secretly a robot. There's a wrecking ball crane thing, or a crane or a truck. That's all Transformers, and that was part of the fantasy, right? Like that anything that you see in your environment, like it could all be Optimus Prime just waiting to be discovered and take you on adventures and fight the evil Decepticons. Like there was a great sense of like adventure to that. That was part of the point. And so like Transformers, like Optimus Prime, like those particular robots that are designed specifically to incorporate, and by necessity because the toys had to be made out of those pieces, that were designed specifically to be made out of the pieces of an ordinary thing rearranged into a robot shape. I thought that was very cool. Like that to me is good mecha design when it sort of relates to the setting of the story that's being told. Conversely, and this is where I'm going to say something controversial, something like Pacific Rim, where the thing they tried to do, and which I don't think they fully succeeded at, was to have the mecha be reflections of the people that pilot them. Like that was sort of the idea, is that each mecha was very uniquely a reflection of the two people that were piloting them. So like that's why the main character's mecha was such a standard as normal Gundam-ass looking mecha, like a very standard humanoid with like a cool helmet, like yeah, like sort of very basic, because that was this is the protagonist's thing, right? And all of the other mecha that didn't get to be part of the movie because they all just got killed were the much more interesting ones, like the one with 3 saw blades that was like piloted by triplets, the Russian one, all of the more interesting cool mecha, which sort of reflected the character dynamics of the characters that were piloting them, just kind of got shunted out of the movie. And left the less interesting mecha behind to sort of carry the main thrust of the action, and I thought that kind of sucked. But like that was a cool idea, but it just didn't. I just did not think it reflected the setting that well, and that was part of, like, with Pacific Rim, which is a movie that I adore. I love Pacific Rim so much. I love everything that's trying to do. It doesn't manage to do all of it successfully, and one of the things is, like, the way that drift compatibility and the way that the robots reflect the pilots was supposed to be a bigger deal, but because the main robot is so fucking boring and such a fucking non-entity, like just a sort of generic cool-ass robot, it sort of, like, thematically, that sort of just devalues the main relationship, like the main emotional connection between the two main characters, is really rather devalued by that their emotional connection, which is the thing that ultimately saves the world, is just like, what's the character design expression of that? It's the most boring robot possible, like the most basic ass, just humanoid robot that punches people thing possible, where everyone else gets to be more interesting, but they're just fucking boring and vanilla. Yeah, that was unfortunate, and that to me is like, that's a failure of mecha design, where if the idea is the mecha reflects the pilots, it should do a better job of that, unless you are very intentionally saying that your protagonists are boring and uninteresting with no, like, vibrant inner life to speak of. So, you know, yeah, that's sort of where I am with that. Brain Brian says, any analysis of Soulsborne bosses that you wish had more context on, during the boss design episode? I mean, I'll say yes and no. Like, there are some things where I look back at it and I go, oh shit, man, there's so much shit I didn't know that might have been worth talking about. But the concept of the series so far, at least until Elden Ring, was also that I'm going in blind. I don't know things, and part of the interesting challenge for me was to extract meaning without the benefit of a fucking wiki. Like, without the benefit of knowing every item description, without the benefit of having all the detail, all the VatiVidya lore videos, like all of the everything, only having access to my own gameplay experience, which is happening blind, where I don't know what I'm doing, and I just have to sort of try and find... That, for me, is the interesting challenge of boss designs Dark Souls 1 and 2, and Bloodborne, is to go in with no context and extract meaning anyway, because that's the fun of art for me. So no, I don't wish I had any more context on any of them for the series. I really don't. Will Cherry asks, how do you feel on basic themes that are executed dynamically? My best example of this are like Titanfall 2 and Pacific Rim. Yeah. Seemingly basic or rather simple concepts that are executed in such a way that are both memorable and honestly fun. What skins do you think execute this mindset? I mean, if you're asking me how do I feel about good things that are done well, is I feel generally positive towards them. That's a question I'm not sure how to answer, because you seem to answer it in the question. But what skins do you think execute this mindset? The mecha skins. Like, you sort of biased me by talking Titanfall and Pacific Rim. But the mecha skins, I think, do a really good job of that. They're just fun. Cafe Cuties. It's just like, yeah, just dressed up in like maid outfits and like, it's just fun. I think Vladimir on that one really could have done with some extra work to make him more interesting as the character that he is, but Cafe Cuties is one of the lines that really does that well, I think. Diego, hey Skyn, hope you're well. What is your opinion of consuming media of people that do terrible things? Fucking hell, I don't know what you mean by that exactly. Like, do you mean World War II documentaries? Or do you mean like a movie that features a rape scene? Because that's a really big, vague, broad question that I'm not really sure how to answer. If what you're asking is, do I think it is immoral to consume media with people that do terrible things? The answer is no. I don't think that's how art works. Like, you have to, like, that's the point of criticism, to look at things that are problematic and to understand the ways in which they are problematic, and to deconstruct them and to understand them without being thoughtlessly influenced by them. So no, I don't think consuming media like reading books, watching anime, playing games, I don't think that in and of itself has a moral dimension. Like, and I mean that even with really, truly, genuinely heinous shit like the Turner Diaries, like, which is probably the most hateful book that's ever been written. Just reading it isn't like a negative moral act. The ways in which you receive it and what you do with the thing that you are, like, with the knowledge that, like, with the information that you're getting from the thing that you're reading, that's where the moral judgment comes from. Like, that's where you either, you know, act like a person or a monster. What matters is what you take away from it. And it does matter in terms of, like, maybe don't buy the Harry Potter books anymore. Don't buy the Harry Potter games or the merchandise, because that money actively supports harm being done to real people. But that's not the same as, like, if there is a Harry Potter book and you read it, that's not evil. That's just, you're just reading a mediocre book. But, like, yeah, like, so yeah, I don't know what you're asking. And if you're asking if I've played Devil May Cry and have any opinions on it, I have a playthrough of Devil May Cry 5 right here on the channel that you can go and check out, where I talk about some of that stuff. And was that all of them? Really? Already? I feel like I had more. Nope. That was all of them. So yeah, if you want to ask me questions like this, that I can sort of ramble on over for like an hour and a half, hit the Patreon. Become a member of one of the channels. Give me a one-time donation on Ko-fi and connect your Ko-fi account to your Discord, and then you get access to the Discord, and through the Discord you can ask questions for this thing. If it's a thing that you want to do. Yeah. Hope you had fun and you were enlightened or vaguely entertained by some of the stuff that I was talking about during this thing, and I will be back with another one next month. See you all. Cheers.